The purpose of this video is to take you through a brief tutorial of Fusion 360 and how to do a simple design using both an additive and a subtractive method. So I'm going to work through two ways of doing the same design. As we learn more about Fusion 360, we're going to learn more about these tools going across the toolbar up at the top. But this is like our first lesson, which should prepare you for your first design in Fusion. So when you open up Fusion, you're going to see a screen that looks like this, and we want to begin our design. Now over here on the right, you're going to have like this view cube, which gives you that top, front, and right. Remember, we talked about isometrics and how we're going to default to the top, the front, and the right. And then you also have this home button, if you can see on the upper right. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but you should be able to see when I hover over the little home button. If at any point you zoom out to zoom in, you move your screen around like I'm doing right there, and you get it off center. If you click the home button, it shifts you right back to where you were, kind of like your home base. So that's a little useful thing to know. So to start a sketch, now what we're going to do is we're going to do like an L-shaped block that's 3 inches long, 1 inch deep, and 2 inches high. Okay, and we're going to start by creating the sketch. Actually, let me check my units. So under document settings here, it says my units are in millimeters. I'm going to change my units over to inches. Okay, and we'll set inches as the default so that it's going to automatically open in inches. When I did my training on this, I did not pay attention to my default units, and I ended up designing a reindeer in millimeters, and that did not meet the requirements of the design, mostly because I was not paying any attention to my units. So over here in document settings, you can go change what the units are. Now across the toolbar, I'm hovering over where it says create sketch, and one of the things Fusion does that's really good is if you hover over something, it will open up a drop down box that will explain to you what that particular tool does. So if at any point you don't know what something does, just kind of hover over it. And we have the tool here, create sketch, and it tells you this will enter sketch mode. So when I click that, it now is going to ask me to select a plane to do my sketch on. All right, now you've got, most of you are familiar from your math classes with the XY plane, but you will notice that we also have a Z axis. If you come over here to this view cube, you can see that the Z axis is the blue one. Okay, I'm hovering over here on the right-hand side of your screen. And then the x-axis is the red one. And then what you can't see, I'm going to kind of grab that and turn it around, is the y-axis is the one in the green. So we typically are going to choose the XY plane. And that's the one that you're most familiar with. So I'm going to click that home button, and that is not what I wanted to have happen. Fantastic. Fried. I have like changed my home view, and now I've got the circle of death there. That is not what I wanted to do. There we go. That's like a little bit better. Right, move that. What I'm doing is I'm clicking and dragging on my home screen there. So I want to choose the plane that is the XY plane. Which should be, I want to like highlight it. There we go. In between the red axis and the green axis. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. There we go, like delayed there for a second. And you'll notice that now I have the green axis running up and down. That's my y-axis, and the red axis is the x line going back and forth. So this is like a normal XY plane that you are used to. And then the z-axis is like coming at us. It's popping out of the screen at us. So for those of you that are in geometry or have yet to take geometry, using this program will definitely help with your geometric reasoning skills. And it's also going to develop a lot of your sense of geometrical relationships with things. So notice that changed all the tools across the top. So we have like a line tool, we have a 2-point rectangle, and we'll explore those as we go through the course. So you can create a circle, a spline, those are kind of fun. Mirroring is dimensioning, that's going to be important as well. And then if I click this tab, you'll see that there's a lot more stuff under there. So we can do like different kinds of patterns. We can do an ellipse, we can do arcs, and then under rectangle, you'll notice that there's actually different ways of doing a rectangle, and that the menu describes what they are. So when you hover over 2-point rectangle, see how the 2 like blue points there are highlighted? You're pretty much gonna like click on the upper left corner and then drag your mouse to the lower right, and that's going to determine your rectangle. A center rectangle is also really useful. You click on the center and then drag out to the corner, and that helps you put like the center of your rectangle where you want it to be. So to start this, I'm going to start with the bottom of my L-shaped box, which is going to be a rectangle that is 3 inches by 1 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and click on 2-point rectangle, and as much as possible, you want to center your sketches at the origin. And there we go. Okay, I don't know, my computer's kind of delaying. It's not kind of delaying, it's really delaying. When you hover over the origin, it should be highlighted in blue, and it's just really not behaving. And I'm going to click my mouse and drag out. And everything is being super laggy, and I hope I can finish the video. And there's my rectangle. I did click, and now I'm going to wait. And now I don't know what that is. And I have the circle of death, and it says it's not responding. Okay, let's hope it's got that out of its system. Okay, so now I need to dimension this. So what I'm doing there is I'm drawing like the bottom of my rectangle. So to dimension it, I come up here to the dimensioning tool, which says sketch dimension, and I click that. And there's different ways you can dimension. So if I come down here and I just hover, oh my gosh, it's just not behaving. Okay, I hover over that, it'll highlight the whole segment, and I can click and then kind of drag upward. And 30 minutes later, it is, I might just not be able to do this video right now. Okay, it will drag the dimension upward, and it will allow me to put in a dimension, maybe. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know if it's showing on your screen, like how everything on like the left-hand side is turning dark. Okay, so I'm gonna put in 3 inches, and I shouldn't have to put in inches because it's gonna default to inches. And it's probably gonna make that super huge, but we're gonna have to wait a month for it to do it. Okay, maybe it did it. It should say 3 inches on there though, and I'm not seeing that it says 3 inches. There we go. Okay, and now I'm going to, it obviously made it too big, so I'm going to use the scroll wheel on my mouse to zoom out, and what I can do is actually click on my scroll wheel and move, like slide the whole thing over. And I am zooming out, but you wouldn't know it because it's being really slow. I don't even know. Okay, well, I wanted to show you a different way to do the dimensions, and for some reason my dimension thing is like still highlighted up there. So Yeah. The other way you can dimension something is by clicking like the distance between them. So if I click the dimension tool, and let's say I want to dimension the left-hand side there, I can click right on the left-hand side and you can see that it's highlighted blue. The other thing you can do though is click the top and then drag it down to the bottom and then drag it out to the left. And what Fusion will do is automatically measure the distance between them. So you'll notice that that line popped up and it's just running super, super slowly. And I should be able to double click on that. And okay, and dimension this at 1 inch. So that's the other way, because sometimes it's really hard to grab the piece that you want, or there's actually no segment there for you to grab onto. And so what's easier is to just grab like either side of it. Now, what I would like to do is zoom out. Oh, it was so good there for a second. Zooming me out like at a normal speed. Eventually we'll see our whole rectangle. There we go. Finally got it down to size there. So that's my whole rectangle, and that's the base of my L-shaped figure. So over here on the right, I'm going to click Finish Sketch. And what I want to do is now extrude that up. Now I just clicked the little home button that brought me back to the isometric view. Right next to where it says the create a sketch, there's this button called extrude, and extrude means to add depth to a closed figure. So I'm going to click that. Now notice that it automatically like highlighted it blue. If you only have one figure on your like sketch, it's going to highlight that figure because there's no other options. But if there's more options, like you actually have to pick what you want it to extrude. Now you can extrude by sight by just grabbing that arrow and dragging it up, but I specifically want to extrude this up to 1 inch. So I'm going to type that in, and then I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom out and kind of drag this back. And what we've done is we've created the base of this. Okay, now I want to create the L part, and the L part needs to go up 1 more inch and then 1 inch out to kind of create this L part. So I come over here to create sketch, and now instead of picking one of the base planes, I'm actually going to pick the top of my figure, and I'm going to draw on the top of the figure. Now notice that as soon as I clicked on that, like it turned it. Now to do this, I want to draw a square, and I want to draw it like at this end, like a 1 inch square. The problem is that if you grab a line tool, it's going to be really hard. Like you can't draw a line on top of the existing edge. So I'm going to pull some geometry out. So if you haven't had geometry, stay tuned. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is draw a rectangle, okay? And I'm only going to dimension one side of this because the other dimension is going to take care of itself. So I want to dimension this side to be 1 inch. Okay, now here's the problem. I can extrude it up, but it's not going right to the edge. So I'm going to use what's called a constraint. And we talked about constraints in our design process, where it's like it tells you a limitation. So when we constrain a sketch, what we're doing is we're putting some kind of limitation on it. We're telling it has to be a certain way. So I am going to look, and again, you can hover over this, like so you can constrain something so it has to be horizontal or vertical. We'll talk about coincident. Tangent, for those of you that have studied geometry, you know what that is. Equal will make things to equal length. Parallel, perpendicular, and so forth. What I am looking for is a collinear constraint, which is this one right here. So I had to click on the drop-down menu. Collinear to do some vocab. Co means together, and linear stands for lines. So collinear means lines together, and it constrains objects so that they share a common line. What I'm going to do is take my edge of the rectangle here, and I'm going to click that, and I want that to be collinear with the edge of the box. And the moment I do that, you'll notice that like it shifted it up like so. I want this edge down at the bottom to be collinear with that, and I want this to be collinear with the back. And what that's done is it's made my rectangle perfectly line up with the box that I already had. And I had to learn that the hard way by trying to make it line up perfectly, and I couldn't. And that's all I need for my second sketch. So I'm going to come down here and click Finish Sketch. And now I'm going to do an extrusion. And that's what I want. Now, notice how that time it didn't automatically pick a surface to extrude because it didn't really know. I had to click on that. And I would like to extrude that up 1 inch. And there's my L-shaped box. And if we do the measurements on it, so inspect, we're going to look at measure. So inspect lets you look at different things. We're going to we'll do like the section analysis and stuff. There's obviously a bunch of stuff that it'll do, but the most useful one for us is just measure. And if I measure it, then it should tell me that is 3 inches. This should tell me it's 1 inch, so selection 2, and then this should be 2 inches tall. Yeah, selection 2. I don't know why it defaulted to a different one, and then this should be 1 inch out. So for some reason it's changing just like selection 2, which is fine. Okay, you can also measure like angles and stuff, and a lot of times when you guys submit a design to me, that's the tool I'm going to use. I might even come to your desk, and when you have a design sitting on Fusion, I'm going to pull out the inspect tool, and I'm going to just like measure certain pieces of it to see if your design has the dimensions it's supposed to have. So that was called an additive method because we designed the bottom of the box and then we added the top to it. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do a subtractive method by doing the entire box and then cutting out this chunk. Okay, so let's go ahead and start a sketch. And I think I'd like to start it on the same plane as before, but I don't know if it's going to let me do that. Like I want it on the bottom. Start it. No, that isn't what I wanted to do. Cancel that. Your best friend is your back button, like where you're like, no, that is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to get it on the XY plane, but it's not letting me. So we'll just open up a new design. Like it's just not letting me pick the plane. Okay, so create a sketch, XY plane. That's what we're going to default to. We're going to default to the XY plane. And this time I am going to do a 2-point rectangle at a normal speed. And this time I also want it to be 3 inches by 1 inch. So I click my dimension tool right there. And we're going to do 3 inches by 1 inch. This time it's not way off. This is more normal. This is like the normal speed that it should go. And this time I'm going to extrude it up 2 inches. So there's my extrude, and we're going to go up 2 inches on that. So to do a subtractive method now, I am going to cut away the section that I don't want. And the section that I don't want, I can cut it 2 ways. I can either cut it down from the top or in from the right-hand side. Either way is fine. So I guess we'll do it on the, we'll cut it in from the right-hand side, but it doesn't matter. So we're going to start a new sketch. And again, notice it doesn't automatically like tell it know where I'm going to start it. I'm going to start it on that surface, and it will flip it like so. And we're going to do our rectangle again. Maybe. And I would like this rectangle to be 1 inch deep that way. And then the rest of it we're going to take care of by putting that constraint on. I think Fusion, because when I hover over it, it was giving me that little plus sign. I think Fusion will line it up, but Inventor didn't. So yeah, Inventor didn't do it. All right, so I'm on collinear. Okay, and if you've done geometry, you'll recognize some of this. We got like parallel, perpendicular, midpoint, symmetry, and so forth. But collinear, so I want to make sure that I am actually going to slice away what I want. So I'm clicking the first line and then what I want it to be collinear with. And we'll finish that sketch. And what we're going to do is hovering over this surface, we're going to cut it in. and do what's called a cut extrude. So I'm going to click extrude. Now notice that it's automatically like pulling it out. You can also pull it in and it will cut. Okay, and notice this, how it's negative. So for those of you that haven't ever studied vectors, that negative is getting into the idea of direction. Okay, and so you can control the direction by making it negative. You can also see over here, it's like a cutting operation where when it's this way, it says, well, there's like a little thing hovering over it, but it says join versus cut. And we want to cut that 2 inches in. And there we go. Now, this, and that's the first one I clicked up at the top, like that was using an additive method. This is using a subtractive method. Both methods are good, and a good designer knows when to choose which method in order to use the fewest number of steps possible. Across the bottom, okay, what you've got across the bottom is kind of like a timeline, and it as you hover over it, if you look at the bottom of the screen, if I hover over sketch 1, it shows me what the first sketch is. Then I hover over that and it shows me the first extrusion. Then it shows me what my second sketch was, and then it shows me the second extrusion. If I go to the additive method, there's sketch 1, there's the first extrusion, there's sketch 2, and there's your second extrusion on that. You could also do this. Let's do it one more way, okay? Just to show like how you can design the same thing different ways. Create a new sketch. We're going to go with the XY plane. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to draw the profile of the L shape. So this time, instead of using a rectangle, I'm going to use the line. And I'm just going to do a very rough looking. And notice what it's doing there. Like, notice how it kind of pops into place when I'm horizontal, which is really nice. That will avoid having to use a horizontal constraint. And that top part isn't horizontal. So we're going to do a couple things to this. So all I did there was try to do a really, really rough like L shape because I know I can fix it. Now, notice this top part here is not horizontal. Okay. And so we're going to put a horizontal constraint on that and click that, and that's great. That made that, let's see, there we go. Okay. You'll notice when I put it on there, it tilted the whole thing up. And so what I did was I put a horizontal constraint on the bottom. And when I did that, this like little shape popped up. Okay, and when you say select sketch objects or the constraint type, it tells you that there's a horizontal constraint on that, making sure that that is horizontal. And the way Fusion works is if it looks like it should be horizontal, it'll make it horizontal. These, if you've taken geometry, you'll recognize them as the symbol for perpendicular, and that's what's called an automatic constraint because Fusion has automatically made that perpendicular. Now I'm going to click my dimensioning tool, and I'm going to try to get this dimensioned the way that I want it. So this needed to be 2 inches tall. Oh, I didn't like that. I don't like that. Okay, what I did was I just clicked back. I'm going to actually dimension this part first. If I can get my act together. This needs to be 1 inch. And the reason I'm doing that is because when I did this one, it just shrank it. Okay, there we go. So I just dimensioned this one, so I didn't have like that wasn't super awkward. This we want to be 3 inches. And then this right here needed to be 1 inch, but I think that's fine. I think if I dimension that, it might tell me that it's over constrained. Yeah, oh, it's already telling me it's automatically 1 inch, if you can kind of see that hovering there. And so I'm not gonna bother constraining that. And then this needed to be 1 inch right here. Okay, and so what I did there was I just created the L shape, and now I only need to do 1 extrusion. I need to extrude it to 1 inch. And there's my shape. So now this one you'll notice is oriented differently. So these ones, the base is on the XY plane, both of those. This one is oriented, so it's kind of on its side, which doesn't honestly really matter. But check out the bottom. I did it in fewer steps. So when it comes to like printing something, you got to print something on the 3D printer, or you have to design something quickly, you want to be aware of the quickest possible way to do it. Okay, so I'm sorry that Fusion ran really slow at the beginning there, but it did finally get its act together. So in summary, we have the additive way of designing something, we have a subtractive way, and then this was a way that had like fewer steps to get us to the same object. So this video is a good review, tutorial, introduction, and will integrate into our first lesson on Fusion.